Hiya, we're live, it's Talking Reds Live. I'm Josh Sexton, joined today by Craig Hannan, and we're going to discuss the transfer deadline day, that was or wasn't for Liverpool, with the lack of business that went on yesterday in terms of transfers, but the business that went on in terms of contracts. It probably says a lot about the business the Reds did yesterday. Me and Craig were exchanging messages about Kanye West's album instead of transfers. So let us know in the comments what you thought of Kanye West's album, what you thought of transfer deadline day, and we'll respond to some of them at the end. Craig, where do you start with it? Let's start at the start of the day. Jordan Henderson's new contract. Objectively, a good bit of business by Liverpool, but the timing is an issue.
I felt as if they were taking the piss a bit out of us, to be quite honest, when I saw that, because we've all known that that contract's been pretty much done for 2 weeks now, if not longer, and we only started to hear about it a couple of weeks ago. I think obviously it's great news that we've got the captain tied down. 4 years is a long time for a 31-year-old, by the way, especially when we wouldn't give Gini Wijnaldum the 3 years that he wanted, and he's 1 year younger. But all in all, that's probably a good bit of business by the club to keep the captain around for as long as possible, because he's a sort of player that we've talked about him as a cultural architect and not just the influence he has on the pitch, which obviously is great as well. And he's the kind of player that you'll want to sort of keep around beyond his playing days, I would imagine. And hopefully that contract is then the stepping stone to that. But yeah, the timing, throwing it out on transfer deadline day morning, I don't know if that's something that was planned. It probably was.
It almost made it harder to talk about as well. I think I wrote a piece yesterday, and so I almost feel a bit sorry for Jordan Henderson. I think I said this to someone in the office yesterday as well. This should have really been his sort of big day, if you want to call it that, in terms of him getting the extension, the club being able to go big on it, and I sort of felt like they shot themselves in the foot a bit by making it on that day, and then in turn it meant that people probably felt like they couldn't celebrate Jordan Henderson's extension as much, which is mad. Yeah,
there's a 2 week international break here where there'll be a lack of content for Liverpool to put out in their social media channels, or and that would have been a time for them to fill with some lovely news. But yeah, putting it in the morning felt like they were taking the piss out of us a bit. And as soon as I saw that, I sort of knew that Liverpool weren't going to do any business, because I thought that's obviously pre-planned. They've decided that that's the best time to do that.
Yeah, and then a bit later in the day we move on to the second contract extension of the day, and at this point it genuinely felt like they were taking the piss. And it's no disrespect to Nat Phillips, by the way. He won our embodiment of Liverpool FC award last season. He was more than deserving of that. He was great for Liverpool last season. You just felt as though this was the summer for Liverpool to cash in, and all the journalists have been reporting all day that there was interest in Nat Phillips from abroad, from English clubs. He's been linked with Brighton throughout this window. They apparently wanted to bring him in to replace Ben White, and then it just seems strange in a summer where you think that Liverpool could be getting rid of some of those sort of fringe squad players, of which Nat Phillips will be, by the way, as well as he played last season. He's not going to be getting games this season if the four main lads, as in Van Dijk, Matip, Konate and Gomez, stay fit. Then there's no chance Nat Phillips is getting near that squad, and yet he gets this big new extension.
I've spoken on shows before about Nat Phillips and how last season I was really happy with what he did in terms of being a stopgap, and in terms of helping Liverpool achieve what they did for this season going forwards, getting into the Champions League. That was massive for us, and he played a massive part in that. The 4 year contract feels a bit mad in that all summer we've talked about and we've heard about the possibility of him going, and that it felt like this summer was the time for his value to be at its highest, really, after what he had done. It felt like it's the best time for everyone. It felt like it was the best time for him not to be sitting on our bench, maybe not even getting on our bench, and just having to play League Cup games. I just felt like it was the right time for everyone. 4 years, probably on about 25 grand a week at least. That's about 5 million over 4 years. And I've seen a few people say about protecting his value, but if we end up with him over 4 years and he hasn't been playing any football, so his value's going down, I'm not sure that's really protecting value. But in saying that, in the context of us not buying anyone and us not bringing anyone in, then I'm all right with more bodies being around, because we've seen what a mad injury crisis can do to us last season, and if we're not going to bring people in, then just keep the bodies. He's English, there's a space for him in the squad. Yeah, that's sort of all I've got on Nat Phillips, because I just don't see where he gets in. I think he gets a League Cup game here and there, and that's it.
And to flip it on its head, you mentioned there about the idea of sort of protecting his value, and I think there's also an extent to which like the club are protecting his value, but like he might have not wanted to leave, and also the club might have not got a satisfactory offer. And like this is speculation, and people would just argue it's speculation. But we spoke about this before, didn't we? The idea that like everything we talk about Liverpool Football Club when it pertains to, you know, business behind closed doors, transfers, contracts, we're all basically speculating, because no one as a supporter anyway truly knows what's going on inside the club. But to speculate on Nat Phillips for a second, there's a chance he didn't want to leave. There's a chance that, you know, the club are protecting his value, and there's a chance that there just wasn't the satisfactory offer there.
Yeah, the nature of the whole of being a football fan is speculative, in that we will never, you know, none of us will ever see what goes on behind doors. You know, most of us, 99% of us, certainly we aren't ever getting to talk to the players like journalists maybe are, to understand the deeper aspects of every single story. But that might be the case. It just felt like it was the best time for everyone, and even just sort of the interviews towards the end of the season and the things that were coming out from journalists, and they are usually the people in the know, it just sort of seemed like everything was geared for him to move on, and for him to ride into the sunset with us all clapping him away and being made up for him. And you know, like I feel like I've seen this sort of thing before with a player, Divock Origi, where Divock Origi, you know, for a long period of time, we're all like, well, he's probably not good enough. And then he does what he does, and we win the Champions League, and he gets that 6 months, and he gets a new contract. And then from that point onwards, you know, he doesn't really do much in a Liverpool shirt. I think he scores against Everton, which is a big thing, obviously, but Divock just fucking does that anyway, do you know what I mean?
In his sleep.
And we're lumbered with him, like we can't get rid of him now. And that's kind of my worry with all of this. But look, we'll see. Maybe in 6 months' time, maybe it gets to January, he hasn't played, he decides that, you know, he gave it a go, he waited to see how Matip's injuries and how Gomez has come back and how Van Dijk's come back, because that's a massive thing. Van Dijk and Matip have both played these first games. They won't be able to play every game. We've got Champions League, we've got League Cup coming up. An injury and suddenly Nat Phillips is in the squad. Another injury and suddenly Nat Phillips might be in and around there. So he might think, well, if I give it 6 months, if I give it 12 months, sign a new contract, for Nat Phillips is a brilliant deal. and then, you know, if he needs to move on, he can try and move on. But I would have liked to have sort of seen him sold and for us to recoup some money.
Yeah, and the other contract extension on the day was Reece Williams. I don't really know what we can add to that. Like, he's a young player. People will slag it off because they've seen Reece Williams play last season and maybe decide to write him off, but ultimately he's a young player the club have rewarded with a new contract. Just on that speculation thing, Craig, I'm interested to know how you sort of view the window as a whole, and sort of where you think it leaves Liverpool, because there's a lot of people saying that, you know, this is a product of FSG, maybe not sort of giving the finances to Liverpool to be able to spend the money. There's an idea from some people who are maybe, you know, treading the line of protecting FSG a bit. There's been a massive divide this whole transfer window. I jokingly wrote in my piece yesterday that it's good to see us all, like, we've still got that kicking off factor on each other, because we used to do it in the days of Rafa and Hicks and Gillette, but it's been gone for a while. There's been quite a lot of harmony, and all of a sudden now it's back, us all kicking off on each other. But how do you view it? Do you think it's the club waiting to hold out for targets? Do you think it's FSG not releasing the money? Do you think it's some from each of those pots?
I don't know. I think the club is definitely risk adverse. I think we've seen that through windows, particularly over the past sort of 3 seasons. I think probably Klopp's a little bit as well. Yeah. Like, I don't think this is just an FSG thing, or you know, whoever's running the transfer side of things.
He said it about big squads
or whatever. Yeah, but also I'm frustrated. Like, I'm really frustrated. I think Liverpool's squad. I think Liverpool can win the league. I do. I think we can. And you know, Saturday was brilliant. Having normality back and having all of that come back, like, I'm so excited for the season now, because we get to sort of live all of these moments again, and it's been so long since we've been able to do that. But I think Liverpool are taking a big risk here, in the same way that they took a risk last year not replacing Lovren, in the same way that they've taken risks before where they've not signed anyone, and in the past they've been fine with it, because, you know, they don't sign really anyone after the European champions, and people look back on that and they'll say, you can say whatever you like, but Liverpool end up with a records points total, or almost a records points total, and they end up with with a league title. And then last season, you look back and I wanted a centre back, but we signed Thiago and we signed Jota, and all we wanted all summer was Thiago, and then we get Jota on top of that, and everyone's going brilliant. But then this injury crisis happens. They took a risk in January, and at the time I remember saying on a show, strategy's long and short, and sometimes you have to sort of in the short term make some short term decisions so that your long term strategy can continue. And they took a big risk there, waiting for Konate and just wheeling and dealing a little bit, and it pays off by the skin of their teeth in that a goalkeeper has to score to get us into the European Cup again. My worry here is that we're taking another risk, and you look at the midfield. The midfield looks well stocked. I always feel like at this time of the season, the squad does look well stocked because it's the start of the season, and because you've brought one in this time. You've young players coming through, but you're a couple of injuries away, and we've got evidence that Naby Keita, he's had how many seasons now, and he hasn't been able to play a full season or to play more than 30 games since, for instance, Oxlade-Chamberlain as well. So there's two that suddenly, if they're gone. Thiago, Henderson, Fabinho, all at different times this last season had little injuries, and so I would have liked one more in there. But I think the striker's the main one here, because at the weekend you've got the three up top, and obviously Firmino has to come off, so Jota has to come on. We want a goal. We're pushing against 10 men, and he doesn't bring Minamino on, so he obviously doesn't trust him. Origi, I don't even think's on the bench. He obviously doesn't trust him, and so. There's no depth there. Like depth's only depth if when a footballer's brought into the fold, or when a footballer's within the squad, that they make an impact somehow. Whether it's keeping the front three on their toes, or whether it's when they come on getting the goals. And Divock Origi's not been depth for 2 years, really, because he's not keeping anyone. Firmino's not worrying about his place because of Divock Origi. It's because of Jota. But then you've got Salah and Mane, and we've seen last year evidence that maybe Mane isn't, and Firmino aren't to the levels of what they were maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I think it's just this idea of freshness for me, and I feel like I'm ranting a bit here, but I'm not. It's good. I'm not. It's this idea of freshness and progression and planning, because one of the things I think Liverpool have done well over the past 4 years at different times is they've signed someone in the summer, and then 6 months down the line they've seen the benefit of that signing. So you see that with Oxlade-Chamberlain the year that we get to Kiev. Don't see much of him, but then from January onwards he's a key component of that team that gets us to Kiev. We signed Fabinho, and 6 months later he's a key component to Liverpool winning the European Cup that year. We might not have done it without him. And Tsimikas is a player here who we signed a year ago, and we don't see anything from him, and some are writing him off. And then this season he's come in the first 2 games, he's got assists, he's played a big part in those first 2 games. So I feel like Liverpool, and you can say Konate is to a certain extent planning because he's a young defender. I feel that forward position, to bring someone in, Neil's talked about it loads, the 24 to 25, the 21 to 25 age group, and I agree. But I think bringing someone in there that maybe we're not bringing him in the short term. We're not bringing him in for now or the Man City game next month or whatever. We're bringing him in for 6 months down the line when Mane and Salah are at the African nations, and he had 6 months to get back in. And if you move Harvey Elliott in there, you've got one less in midfield. So I think we're taking risks that we don't need to take.
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely with you on a lot of that. I think it's also balanced as well, which is something that's been severely lacking. Look, I know everybody's got their opinions, and everybody's absolutely entitled to their opinions. Your opinion doesn't make you, more or less than anybody else. But I think everybody needs to sort of look at both sides of it, and this is something that Klopp's always done. This is why I asked this question, to be honest, because we watch all of Jurgen Klopp's press conferences. We do a show called The Team Talk, which I host after it as well. And in all of those press conferences, every time the idea of transfers gets brought up, he sometimes hints at a lack of money. That's the thing that he hints at, and that's all we can really know, because it's the only way we can know whether Jurgen Klopp's happy with the business Liverpool doing, whether he's happy under ownership of FSG. Is that sometimes, and particularly last January, he hinted at the idea of a lack of resources, but he also constantly hints at the idea of the right player not being available, and if the right player was available, they'd go for it. And he's done that throughout this window, and that's why I almost wonder whether this window is not necessarily to do with a lack of resources. I had people tweeting me off the back of my piece last night going, "Oh, FSG never spend money though." Well, we spent 75 million last summer, so it's not technically true that they never spend any money. That's on 3 players. Yeah, fair enough. But if they spend it on one player, does that make people more satisfied that they've spent all that money? I'm with you on the options thing. I don't think it's that he can't trust Minamino though. I think he doesn't yet trust Minamino. I don't think Minamino's had enough of an opportunity to be trusted. I think he doesn't believe he can trust Origi, and that's sort of where I do have an issue on that one.
See, I wonder, like with Minamino, I wonder if he has had enough of an opportunity, and that, like, you know, obviously he has the first 6 months and that's him bedding in, and then he has the first 6 months of the last 6 months of his first 6 months of his Liverpool career, last 6 months of the year we win the league. He has the first 6 months then, and look, he looked good in that League Cup game against Lincoln, and there's like little bits of him, you're thinking, you know, there's a player here. But then we don't see him again, and then he goes out on loan to Southampton. He doesn't really tear it up. There's a few goals there, but it's nothing that you can hang your hat on and say, well, you know, this is a player that'll come in and make a real difference. And so I think, how long is it? Does he need to throw him on more? You know, because he doesn't even bring him on at the weekend. So he obviously, there isn't that trust there. I just don't know with Minamino. I just think that he has had time, because time isn't just on the pitch. It's on the training ground. It's everything that goes on in the background, because he sees all Jurgen Klopp and we don't. So again, I'm speculating. And you're right on the opinions thing. Like, I'm giving my opinion. I don't mean to kick off. I'm not kicking off at the ownership, because you know, with everything in life,
balance. You were looking at both sides.
Everything in life, there's nothing in life that's black or white, is it? And that's the problem with social media. The problem with football fandom at the moment is you have to be on one side, you have to be on the other. You're either, you know, you're FSG out, or you're you know, whatever. You're in their pocket.
Top or bottom red.
Whatever. What a pile of shite. But yeah. That's broadly where I stand on it.
And the Michael Edwards thing, I think, hasn't sort of helped the timing of that either, has it? Like, this is where I think as a football club is where you can know that things are going wrong. So Arsenal, for example, if we use Arsenal as like the sort of bare bones bottom example of someone in the Premier League, where you can see it's going wrong. You know there's noises coming out of the club. You've got lads like Maitland-Niles going on his Instagram stories kicking off about the idea that he's being like left to rot in the reserves. You've got lads who they hired. That's Sven Mislintat. I think they brought him in a few years ago. He's like fucking off already to go somewhere else. Like, the Arsenal have implemented a strategy and it's clearly gone wrong, and you can see that with everything that's being communicated out from the club. I don't think you can necessarily see that, and I'm not sure I truly believe that Michael Edwards leaving is a sign of that either. Like, all the journalists have obviously been briefed that Michael Edwards just wants a new challenge. Do you believe what the journalists are being briefed? Maybe not, no, from the last few years. It's nothing to do with the journalists. It's more to do with what they're being briefed. The journalists are just reporting what they're being briefed, absolutely doing their jobs. I think Michael Edwards probably just wants a new challenge, and I also think things will just be fine after he leaves. I don't think a whole scouting and transfer department could possibly be built around this one fella who a few years ago we didn't even believe in anyway. No one believed in. Rob always points to that piece where the Daily Mail journalist is just slagging him off and saying, oh, it's for proper football men and stuff. Like, we only believed in this fella after he made a few good transfers, but he still built an analyst team there. He still built a scouting team there, which can surely just carry on after he's gone, and he'll make it so as well.
It's the team. It's a machine, and there's different cogs in the machine. It's like any workplace, and again, like any workplace, he's been at Liverpool for quite a while now, and he might fancy a new challenge because he's a human, and that's what happens in work. And obviously we see football as being different to that. But I think there will have been succession planning. I think he'll want succession planning, because I don't think he'll want to leave and for it all to fall apart, because then really has he done his job properly? But also, I don't think it will. I mean, he was part of the Milan transfer committee at one stage, and that was just because he was maybe that they had the wrong team in place, or there was the wrong strategy. You know, there's different components of the business that maybe weren't working well, but now have been working perfectly. He could go off somewhere else and not do it. We don't know. I'm not sort of. Not that I'm not worried, I'm not stressing out about that. I think it's just maybe over the last couple of days fed into the general anxiety of a fan base that, you know, has a need for signings and a need for newness, and that is just football fandom at the minute, I think. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, we got a lot of messages and tweets yesterday about the things that the Anfield Wrap covers. There's probably not a lot of people who are onto all the things we do in terms of subscription podcasts, subscription videos. We've been covering all the transfer business, or lack of, throughout this window. We've been doing loads of gutter shows every day day, loads of talking transfer shows on our video platform as well, all that kind of thing, covering all these bases. We've also done loads of shows on FSG, loads of shows on basically everything you could possibly want, but we do have a lot of content, so it's impossible to consume all of that. But we'll give you a little taster of that just in case you don't get the chance to see into that. And here's a little clip from our gutter show yesterday, which sort of looked at the bigger picture in Liverpool's rivals and the business that's been done this transfer window.
In our heads, because we're obsessed with us and we're worried. And in general, this is the bit that I find difficult, genuinely, is what this does to Liverpool supporters en masse. Is it makes it really hard for them to live in the moment and enjoy it. I'm arguing with people last night who were still trying to have a counterfactual discussion about the 2019 window. We won 26 out of the first 27 games. It you know, they won the FIFA Club World Cup. It was the time to be alive. And if we're not careful, and I'm saying it as somebody who is concerned, you know, I've talked constantly about 21 to 24. But Saturday was great. It was boss, and it was two great teams absolutely going at each other.
Who did we sign in that window you're just referring to? There was a signing.
In 19.
Yeah.
Adrian and Elliott, so football.
Harvey Elliott.
Play. Yeah.
Harvey Elliott.
But I'm just in general, I think it's important, firstly, not to act as though they are behemoths, but so are we. And I understand, therefore, that the frustration from people becomes, well, we need to act like a behemoth then. But they're competing with us. And they're looking like, if I supported United, I'd be going, what the fuck have we done here in the middle of the park? Why have we not, year, why have we not addressed this? You could see this coming. They've still got an issue at right back with Wan-Bissaka because he trips over his own feet. You know, I'm not convinced Varane will be that much of a smooth prospect for them. And, you know, we'll see about that, and I could be wrong. And again, you can go on, I can go on around Chelsea here as well. You know, genuinely, Chelsea are, Blundell phrased it this way this morning, Mr. Phil, and he's right. A Jorginho injury to Chelsea wouldn't be that far away what the Van Dijk injury does to us, because he's so important to everything they do. If they lost Jorginho for 3 months, they'll all be looking at each other going, who the fuck can do this? We haven't got anyone else who can do anything like this. And he would have to remake it, and he would, because he's a good manager in the same way our fella's good as well. And listen, I just think we're meant to enjoy this, and there's a lot of people, for whatever reason, and I think COVID's a thing, and I think not being able to celebrate the league's a thing, and I think a general sort of environment of everybody worrying themselves sick about everything is a thing. But this is meant to be enjoyable, and Liverpool have got fucking great players, tons of them, and they can win this. They can win this league and win. Okay, yep, that is from our Gutter Show, one of our subscription podcasts on our subscription service. That's £7 for audio only. If you want to go and subscribe, anfieldwrap.com/subscribe for all our audio podcasts. Or you can pay a tenner and get the video as well. You can pay £7 and just get the video if you want. You can click the join button if you're watching this on YouTube, and that will entitle you to all the Talk Player Premium videos as well. We'll go through some of your comments. There's been a lot of comments as we've been going through this.
Someone's saying we've drawn the short straw here for doing post-deadline video. I don't think we have. I'd much rather do it the day after, because the day of, like, you say things and then something can happen afterwards. You look like a knobhead.
I think he means because of the fume, doesn't he? But to be fair, look, it gives us loads to talk about. So the
cathartic.
The fume is the fume, exactly. Hopefully it's cathartic for some of you watching as well. Nipsey Russell says, no sugarcoating it. We are in a good name, by the way. We're in a worse position at the close of the window than at the start, while the opposition have all strengthened significantly. I wouldn't say it's not. Sorry, I didn't say significantly worse, but it's the worst position. There's an argument we're in a weaker position squad-wise. The opposition all strengthened. I think they all needed to. I think they all had glaring issues in their first 11s and squads that needed addressing.
Yeah, I think that's also fed into the anxiety, isn't it? Like, I mean,
I also don't think Liverpool should do business based on what their rivals do.
Absolutely not. And I don't think either I'm going to sort of stand here and celebrate Man United's business, because their business in the transfer window over the past 6-7 years has been shite, and they've thrown money at things and hope for the best. I think what they've done this summer is, you know, Sancho, everyone sort of says is a great signing. I think Ronaldo sort of reinvigorates the fan base, and sort of, if they hadn't already with Varane coming in, but it sort of lifts them all. And I think it might end up being very smart in that he scored 30 goals for Juventus the last 3 seasons. But absolutely not. I wouldn't have expected Liverpool to panic, having seen what United are doing. Liverpool have their own plan, their own strategy, and whether we agree with what they've done now looking back, or whether, you know, we sort of just have to try and trust the process and look at it in the context of everything at the end of the season. But I'm not stressed over it. Like you said, we've seen United's centre midfield, like Tomine, Fred and Matic. the big fucking, he's a chest of drawers, isn't he? Or he
Big
moves
fridge.
like one. And City, you look at their bench the last few games, it hasn't really been
Still
up to
not got a
much.
striker, really. Jesus.
No. So there's question marks around all of the rivals, and I still think Liverpool are well placed to challenge for this league, and I'm still so excited for the season. I am. It's just when we're asked our opinion on the transfer window, and we have it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Nandan is taking a leaf out of your book, Craig. He says, we have a strong 11, we will win the league. Is right, Nandan. I'm into that.
The Reds have got no money and they're still going to win the league.
The Reds have got no money and we'll still win the league. There's the idea that people are saying of injuries happening and that kind of thing. And this is something I think Jurgen Klopp has directly addressed in the past as well, is that you can't necessarily build a squad to account for injuries, because ultimately if the injuries then don't happen, you've got players to keep happy. And Klopp has always been someone who I think likes to work with a thinner squad. He believes in sort of keeping that squad harmony. So this is why I sort of question whether Jurgen Klopp will or won't be happy with this window. I think he probably, maybe not the window necessarily, but he'd be definitely happy with the squad, I think, because it's a more trim squad, and he'll be happy to just keep the harmony.
Yeah, you can't. I understand you can't buy players in case of injury, but you can buy players in the positions where we know that we have players that are most likely to get injured based on the evidence. And
but then still, if they don't, you've got an issue, haven't you?
But what, it's a better issue than suddenly we've got Fabinho, Henderson and Thiago trying to play 2 or 3 games a week because we've got no Keita and we've got no Oxlade-Chamberlain, and Harvey Elliott's having to play up top because we've got no Salah at the African Nations. There's going to be, I still think they're going to have to do something in January, and I know they don't like to. I know that last year we were sort of forced into doing bits, if you can call them that, but I think they're going to have to do something in January. But like I said earlier, I would have liked them to have done it in the summer now, so we've got these players to settle in, to find their place in the squad, to settle in the city, in the team, and then be ready for whenever Salah and Mane are away. I know it's only 2 games, by the way, but 2 games.
Could be even less if they get knocked out early as well.
Yeah.
Aaron Bakewell says, getting shut of deadwood, he puts in inverted commas, seems to be a particular issue for us, commanding too high a fee or just no interest. I think that could potentially be a COVID thing. I think Liverpool have particularly over the last few years, been really good at getting shut of deadwood, and even still, they've managed to get 12 million for Harry Wilson this window. I know they've commanded more, so maybe our perception is skewed by that fee, but 12 million for Harry Wilson is still a lot.
I think they've done all right. I think that some of the players that they've got rid of, they wanted to get rid of. Grujic has gone out. I don't think it's on loan. I think it's on permanent, or at least it ends up being permanent. Yeah. Harry Wilson as well, Shaqiri. there's some there's a bit of money that's come in. I think that's where there is a bit of frustration that we were told throughout the summer that. We were told before the summer that the Redbirds investment would help sort of alleviate some of the stresses of COVID that COVID's had in our finances. And then we've sold these players that we said we'd have to sell to, albeit we haven't sold Origi, and we've freed up the space in the squad. Shaqiri's being sold does that, and no one comes in.
Yeah, I'm just reading through some more of the comments here. Copman99 says that lad with the Nat Phillips tattoo is made up. I'm not sure how they've all seen my tattoo. It's on a different shirt. There's loads of comments about Harvey Elliott, and if we signed him, it would be good business. I tend to agree with that, but I also take your point before that if you put Harvey Elliott into front three, you lose an option in midfield there.
Yeah. No, I'm excited about him. I really am. But I still think we've got one missing there. Like if you're talking about depth, I think if, so at the moment Firmino's injured, if we're playing Leeds in 2 weeks and you've got the front three and then there's Minamino behind him, I wonder, does he push Harvey Elliott further forward rather than playing Minamino? I'm not sure.
We've been going for ages here, so I'll stop taking all the football comments. GLFC says, Josh favourite Tupac album, mine's Machiavelli, Don Illuminati. Mine's All Eyes on Me, mate. I'm a bit of a basic bitch in that sense. There was a comment on Facebook, Craig, as well, which says Donda was boss, which I was into considering what we were talking about at the start there.
It's a grower, definitely a grower.
Scott Williams said about our shapes on Saturday night. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure that we could class them as shapes.
Oh, absolutely. I was throwing shapes still over you.
More fluid than shapes, I think they would be. There wasn't many edges to them. Paddy Fitzsimons has been on. He says, "All right, the boys. All right, Paddy. This is me and Croatian Craig here doing this." I think that's it. I think we're done. John Gibbons is waiting in the wings, looking at us furiously. So we'll wrap up there. As I mentioned before, you can subscribe to the Anfield Wrap. You can click the join button if you're watching this on YouTube. That will get you all of our premium video shows at £7 a month. £7 a month for our audio shows. If you want to go and subscribe over on the website, that's anfieldwrap.com/subscribe. A tenner for the whole thing. Download the app, buy the merch, all that good stuff. Take care.